Melinda Snyder was a bright, ambitious young woman whose life was tragically cut short in 1990, leaving a void in the hearts of her family, friends, and the community of Rock Hill, South Carolina. Born and raised in this quiet town, Melinda was known for her radiant smile, kind nature, and determination to make a difference in the world. As a former beauty queen, she had a captivating presence that extended beyond the stage, earning admiration from peers and teachers alike. A recent graduate of Winthrop University, Melinda had her sights set on a promising future. She pursued a degree in business administration with dreams of building a successful career in real estate. Her interest in the field was inspired by her mother, a respected real estate agent in Rock Hill, who often spoke about the challenges and rewards of the profession. Melinda's determination to follow in her mother's footsteps was evident in her diligent studies and internships, where she displayed remarkable professionalism and enthusiasm. Beyond academics and career aspirations, Melinda was an active participant in community service and church activities. She frequently volunteered at local shelters and fundraising events, demonstrating a strong sense of compassion and responsibility. Friends described her as someone who could light up a room with her infectious energy and unwavering optimism. In the months leading up to her death, Melinda had been enjoying her newfound independence after moving into a condominium on Eden Terrace. It was a fresh start filled with exciting prospects, but it also came with its own set of challenges. Despite the adjustments of living alone, she maintained close contact with her family, particularly her mother and younger brother, who often checked in on her well-being. However, Melinda's life took a devastating turn on January 23, 1990. What began as an ordinary day ended in an unimaginable tragedy, shocking the entire community. The circumstances surrounding her death would soon unravel a complex investigation filled with twists, legal battles, and a relentless pursuit of justice. On the night of January 23, 1990, Rock Hill's usual calm was shattered by a chilling emergency call that would set in motion one of the most unsettling murder investigations in the town's history. The call came from Melinda Snyder's condominium on Eden Terrace, a place that, until then, had been a sanctuary for the young woman as she embarked on her post-college life. The call, placed around 10:30 p.m., was brief but alarming. A concerned neighbor, having heard loud thuds and a muffled scream from Melinda's unit, dialed 911. Responding officers from the Rock Hill Police Department arrived within minutes, finding no immediate signs of forced entry. However, upon entering the apartment, they stumbled upon a horrifying scene. Melinda's lifeless body lay sprawled on the bedroom floor, partially clothed and showing signs of a violent struggle. A deep wound to the head indicated blunt force trauma, and bruising around her neck suggested strangulation. Investigators believed the attack had been sudden and brutal, catching her off guard in what should have been the safety of her home. A nearby lamp had been knocked over, and several personal belongings were scattered across the room, hinting at a desperate attempt to defend herself. Crime scene technicians meticulously combed through the apartment, noting the absence of any signs of forced entry. This detail raised immediate concerns. Had Melinda known her attacker? Or had someone gained access to the unit through other means? The front door was locked when officers arrived, leading detectives to consider the possibility that the assailant had used a spare key or entered through an unlocked door or window. As investigators pieced together the final hours of Melinda's life, they discovered that she had last been seen earlier that evening at a local grocery store, where she had stopped to pick up a few items after work. Surveillance footage from the store captured her chatting briefly with a cashier before heading home. Friends reported that Melinda had spoken to her mother over the phone around 7 p.m., mentioning that she planned to relax for the evening and prepare for a busy day at work the following morning. In her condominium, nothing appeared to be stolen. Her purse, wallet, and keys remained untouched, ruling out robbery as a primary motive. However, investigators found something unsettling: a Realtor's lockbox attached to the doorknob. Melinda's mother, who had helped her find the apartment, recalled that the lockbox had been left behind by the previous tenants and was still there despite efforts to have it removed. The presence of this device raised questions about whether someone could have accessed a spare key without her knowledge. The news of Melinda's murder spread rapidly through Rock Hill, sending shockwaves through the community. Friends, co-workers, and neighbors were devastated, struggling to comprehend how such a tragedy could befall someone so beloved. Candlelight vigils were held in her honor, and local law enforcement vowed to leave no stone unturned in their pursuit of justice. Despite the grim scene, investigators remained hopeful that forensic evidence would provide crucial leads. Fibers, fingerprints, and traces of DNA were collected, with hopes that technological advancements could reveal the identity of the perpetrator. However, the lack of immediate suspects left detectives with more questions than answers. Who had the opportunity and motive to harm Melinda? And how had they managed to escape without leaving a clear trail? As detectives pressed forward with their investigation, they turned their attention to Melinda's personal life, examining relationships, acquaintances, and anyone who might have had a reason to do her harm. In the days following Melinda Snyder's tragic murder, the Rock Hill Police Department launched an intensive investigation, meticulously examining every aspect of her life. Investigators faced mounting pressure from both the public and media, who were eager for answers in a case that had gripped the small community with fear and speculation. Detectives began by focusing on those closest to Melinda, believing the perpetrator was likely someone she knew. The first person they interviewed was her roommate, who had been away at the time of the murder. She provided valuable insight into Melinda's recent activities and relationships, describing her as a cautious person who rarely opened the door to strangers. Despite this, she revealed that Melinda had been feeling uneasy in the weeks leading up to her death, mentioning a lingering sense of being watched. Attention soon shifted to Melinda's ex-boyfriend, a local mechanic named Brian Carver. Their relationship had ended several months prior, but friends suggested that Brian had struggled to move on. Witnesses recalled seeing him outside Melinda's condominium on more than one occasion after their breakup, fueling suspicions that he may have harbored resentment. When questioned, Brian admitted to having lingering feelings for Melinda, but denied any involvement in her death. He provided an alibi, stating he had been working late at his auto shop on the night of the murder. Investigators verified his claims, temporarily ruling him out as a suspect. Another person of interest was Melinda's brother, Jason Snyder. The two had been close growing up, but their relationship had reportedly grown strained in recent months due to personal disagreements. Detectives questioned him extensively about his whereabouts on the night of January 23rd. Jason maintained that he had been at home with his girlfriend and expressed deep sorrow over his sister's death. Although his alibi held up, some investigators remained wary of unresolved tensions between the siblings. Despite extensive interviews, one lingering mystery continued to baffle detectives: the Realtor lockbox found on Melinda's front door. Friends and family insisted that Melinda rarely used it, raising the chilling possibility that someone else had gained access to her apartment through it. Investigators traced the lockbox back to a local real estate agency, discovering that it had been used during the property's previous sale. Further digging revealed that one realtor in particular, Edward "Ed" Cronell, had shown the apartment multiple times and retained access to the lockbox key even after the sale was finalized. Cronell was a well-known figure in Rock Hill's real estate market, described by colleagues as charismatic but occasionally aggressive when closing deals. When detectives reached out to him for an interview, they noted his evasive demeanor and inconsistent statements about his interactions with Melinda. He initially claimed to have no recollection of her, but phone records later revealed several calls made to her apartment in the weeks leading up to her death. Cronell attempted to explain them away as routine follow-ups related to the lockbox's removal, but his explanations did little to alleviate detectives' growing suspicions. Meanwhile, forensic analysis of the crime scene continued. Hair samples and fingerprints found in Melinda's bedroom were compared against known acquaintances, but no definitive match emerged. Investigators worked tirelessly to build a timeline of events, piecing together her last known movements and potential encounters. Surveillance footage from nearby businesses showed no signs of forced entry, further complicating the case. As the investigation deepened, detectives began to suspect that Melinda's killer had planned the attack carefully, exploiting their knowledge of her routines and vulnerabilities. The possibility that she had been targeted due to her real estate connections became a growing concern, leading law enforcement to expand their inquiry into individuals with ties to the industry. Despite mounting leads and an expanding list of persons of interest, the investigation remained frustratingly inconclusive. As days turned into weeks, the Rock Hill community anxiously awaited justice for Melinda Snyder, unaware that the most shocking revelations were yet to come. Melinda's mother, Diane Snyder, recalled the Lockbox being present when they first toured the condominium months earlier. The property had previously been listed with a local real estate agency, which used the Lockbox to allow agents and prospective buyers access to the unit. Although Melinda had moved in months ago, the device had never been removed, something that, in hindsight, now seemed like a critical oversight. Investigators traced the Lockbox to Carolina Realty Group, a prominent real estate firm in Rock Hill. Records indicated that multiple agents had access to the Lockbox code during the sale of the property. Among those listed was Edward Ed Cronell, a realtor with a reputation for being persistent and sometimes intrusive in his dealings with clients. He had shown the condominium several times before Melinda's purchase, and according to records, had visited the property as recently as 2 weeks before her death, under the pretense of checking on the unit's condition. Further examination of the Lockbox usage logs revealed disturbing inconsistencies. The device had been accessed on the night of Melinda's murder, but the entry was not logged under her name or any authorized personnel. This suggested that someone with prior knowledge of the code had used it to enter the apartment undetected. Investigators questioned whether Cronell or someone else with access could have exploited this security loophole. As suspicion mounted, detectives questioned Cronell again. His responses grew increasingly defensive, and when pressed about his whereabouts on January 23rd, he offered conflicting statements. Initially, he claimed to have been at home watching television, but further investigation revealed that his vehicle had been spotted near Eden Terrace around the time of the crime. Surveillance footage from a nearby convenience store captured a man resembling Cronell purchasing a soft drink just minutes from Melinda's apartment, contradicting his earlier alibi. In addition to the Lockbox, investigators found a troubling connection between Cronell and Melinda. Friends disclosed that Melinda had mentioned feeling uneasy around him after he made unsolicited visits to her apartment under the guise of discussing unresolved paperwork. She had once confided to a coworker that Cronell gave her an uncomfortable vibe, but had brushed off her concerns, assuming they were harmless. Despite mounting circumstantial evidence, prosecutors knew that proving Cronell's involvement would require more than speculation. The forensic team was tasked with analyzing the Lockbox for fingerprints and DNA evidence, hoping it would place Cronell or another suspect directly at the scene. Meanwhile, detectives continued to probe his background, uncovering a history of inappropriate behavior toward female clients that had previously gone unreported. As detectives delved deeper into the circumstances surrounding Melinda Snyder's murder, one name repeatedly surfaced: Edward Ed Cronell. What initially appeared to be a routine connection between a real estate agent and a former client soon escalated into a major focal point of the investigation. Cronell's interactions with Melinda, combined with discrepancies in his alibi and his access to the Realtor Lockbox, placed him under growing scrutiny. Detectives continued to probe Cronell's past and discovered a troubling pattern. In the years prior, several women had filed informal complaints against him, alleging inappropriate behavior during property viewings. Though no formal charges were ever filed, these incidents painted a picture of a man who may have used his position to gain access to women's homes under the guise of business. With mounting suspicion, investigators obtained a warrant to search Cronell's home and vehicle. Inside his car, they found a set of keys that included one striking discovery: a duplicate key to Melinda's condominium. Cronell insisted that the key was from a prior showing, claiming he had simply forgotten to return it. However, forensic testing revealed traces of Melinda's DNA on the key, suggesting it had been handled recently. As evidence against Cronell continued to build, detectives faced the challenge of securing a direct link between him and the crime scene. The forensic team carefully analyzed fibers and fingerprints collected from Melinda's bedroom, hoping for a match. Meanwhile, prosecutors prepared to request a court order to obtain Cronell's DNA, a move that would set off a contentious legal battle in the months to come. Cronell's demeanor shifted dramatically under pressure. Initially cooperative, he grew increasingly agitated during interrogations, often deflecting questions or claiming he was being unfairly targeted. His colleagues, once willing to vouch for him, began to distance themselves, uneasy about the cloud of suspicion that now surrounded him. With growing confidence that Cronell was involved, detectives prepared to present their findings to the district attorney. However, they knew that circumstantial evidence alone might not be enough to secure a conviction. They needed irrefutable proof, something that would definitively place Cronell at the scene of the crime and bring justice for Melinda Snyder. While circumstantial evidence was strong, they needed his DNA to link him definitively to the crime. However, Cronell refused to provide a sample voluntarily, forcing prosecutors to seek a court order, a move his defense team fought aggressively, citing insufficient probable cause. The legal battle escalated to the South Carolina Supreme Court, with the defense arguing that Cronell's interactions with Melinda were purely professional. Meanwhile, prosecutors highlighted the disturbing pattern of his behavior and the Lockbox access records. After weeks of debate, the court ruled in favor of law enforcement, allowing them to obtain a DNA sample via a cheek swab. Forensic analysts quickly compared Cronell's DNA to evidence from the crime scene, focusing on skin cells found under Melinda's fingernails. The match was conclusive, placing him at the scene. With this breakthrough, investigators prepared for trial, confident they had the evidence needed to bring justice for Melinda Snyder. The trial began in early 1992 at the York County Courthouse, with prosecutors presenting a compelling case built on circumstantial and forensic evidence. The courtroom was filled with emotion as Melinda's family and friends watched the proceedings unfold. Prosecutors emphasized the chilling nature of Cronell's actions, portraying him as a man who had carefully planned the crime and exploited his knowledge of real estate procedures to avoid suspicion. They argued that his persistent visits to Melinda's home and unauthorized access to the lockbox demonstrated a dangerous obsession. Witnesses, including Melinda's co-workers and family members, recounted her growing fear in the weeks leading up to her murder. They testified that she had expressed unease about Cronell's behavior, but never imagined it could lead to such a horrific outcome. Prosecutors presented surveillance footage, phone records, and forensic findings, including Melinda's DNA found under her fingernails, which proved a violent struggle had taken place. Cronell's defense team maintained his innocence, claiming that the forensic evidence could have resulted from his prior visits to the property. They argued that the prosecution had no eyewitnesses and that the case relied too heavily on circumstantial evidence. Despite their efforts, expert witnesses systematically refuted these claims, pointing out the specificity of the DNA evidence and the inconsistencies in Cronell's alibi. After 3 days of deliberation, the jury found Cronell guilty of first-degree murder. Judge Stephen Harland handed down a life sentence without parole, citing the premeditated and violent nature of the crime. Melinda's family, though relieved by the verdict, remained heartbroken over their loss. They vowed to honor her memory by pushing for stricter security measures in rental properties, ensuring that similar crimes could be prevented in the future. If you have finished watching, you are a real fan of true crime. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the bell notifications, and put the like. See you in the next video.